It's Tuesday and we're here. It is 110 at 10, 110 around 10. I think it's what we're going to start calling it, 110 around 10, because then I don't feel bad, for being late. And I got places, these things are in two different places. It's not going to work. I'm going to try. I'm going to look right in the middle. Anyway, no, I have to look down. I have to look over here. We got things going on, and I know it's a mess behind me. Look, we're working on it. I've got some plans and ideas to make this space better and to make our 110 at 10s because like this, I love this. Like I know I joke about it with certain things, but like this is one of my favorite times of the day where I can stop doing anything else that's going on and just talk to you guys, share with you what I'm finding in the Word today, seeing something. And so I am super excited about these. I love these. We've got Hulk Best, which is James, my dad. We got Kathy. We've got James Compton. We've got Anna. We've got Josh. Jacob just left for work, so he's going to miss out on that. But that's okay. So we've got those people on Instagram. Over here on Facebook, we've got Christy and Caitlin. So excited to have everybody. As people show up, I always try to give you a shout out and make sure that I understand that you're here. I love you guys being here. I love these things. So Kathy says good morning. So good morning. See some hellos in here, some hi. Christy, I miss you, not being able to see you and hang out. And I know you're kind of stuck, where you're at. And so we miss everybody a lot. So I am going to jump right in. Isaiah 63. I'm gonna give you some time. I'll give you a moment to get to Isaiah 63. I'm very self-conscious now about how I speak and what I look like in front of a camera. Not because I care, but I have found out that there are people, I'm not going to name names, there are people out there that watch people and then do impressions of them. And so, I want to make sure that if there's an impression being made of me, which there are, and it's weird watching somebody do an impression of you, especially when you're like, do I really do that? But anyway, I want to make sure that if there is an impression of me, it's funny, at least, maybe, I don't know. So anyway, Isaiah 63, and this is something this morning that when I read it, and I'm reminded of this a lot, I see this a lot, and I don't know that it's sunk in yet, and I'm trying to. Again, I think scripture and studying scripture and looking at scripture is very, like, it never ends. Like, we never get to a point where, like, I don't need this anymore, I'm good. I just don't think we get there. And so I'm always reminded of some things. This specific thing this morning, I feel like I'm reminded of a lot, and I just don't know that it's sunk in yet. So I want to share with you today just the thought process that I got from my man Tozer, which I love. I love Tozer. I love his heart and his soul for God. I know I talk about him a lot, but he's just someone that I pay attention to a lot. So anyway, Isaiah 63, verse 7, really. So Timothy, hey, bub. So Isaiah 63, verse 7, I will recount the steadfast love of the Lord. Or your passage, because it's a little different here, might say, I will mention the loving kindness of the Lord. I will recount the steadfast love of the Lord, the praises of the Lord, according to all that the Lord has granted us and the great goodness to the house of Israel, that he has granted them according to his compassion, according to the abundance of his steadfast love. And here's the interesting thing. I think that we sometimes, and this is the challenge, I think sometimes we create adjectives, we add things to descriptions of God. His love, just the way our language works, and this is where it's challenging, right? Not disagreeing with the words of Scripture here. But when we see things like steadfast love, talking about his steadfast love, sometimes our brains, because of the way we use language, we separate his love and start adding things to it. So we think that there is a time where we can talk about his steadfast love. Then there's a time that we can talk about his forgiving love. Then there's a time that we can talk about his merciful love. So there's sometimes where, and I don't want to lose you. I don't want to go crazy, deep or anything like this. But I want you to understand that there's adjectives sometimes that we put in front of God. We put in front of his characteristics that separate them from what they need to be. Listen, his love here, and it's okay to use steadfast love. It really is. There's nothing wrong with this language. It's wrong the way we think about it. Is that his love is always steadfast. His love is always merciful. His love is always gracious. His love is always merciful. And I'm sorry if you hear a bunch of noise. I can't stop that. They're working. They're trying to finish up some construction today. It's intermittent. And so I was hoping to be able to get this in before they started again, but I'm sorry. I will speak a little bit louder just to make sure that you can hear me. But we see these adjectives, and sometimes I'm afraid that we can get on. We don't need to say, this is quoting here from here, we don't need to say God's great love, although we do say it. We don't need to say God's abundant mercy, although we say that. And I think it's because we need to hear those words for us, because we try to elevate them in our brain. Like, this is the mercy we're talking about, his abundant mercy, and his mercy is always abundant. His love is always great. It is always steadfast. There is always these things to him, and they're very useful. Like when we talk about something that, on earth, like the adjectives are important, and I've been learning that as I'm typing things out and as I'm speaking, right? As I'm trying to become better in my craft of speaking. There's usage, and there's correct usage of words, and we use them as humans. But when we use them towards God, there's not a way to like. So I'm trying to think through my brain right now an example. If I was to say, I love, I don't know, I love pizza. No, it's not a good example. Give me a moment. I'm trying to think here. Maybe love pizza works. I love pizza, right? I enjoy eating pizza. So I would say I love pizza. I love my wife. I don't love my wife the same way I love pizza. Like that. It's weird, right? So it's not the same. So sometimes we add adjectives. I greatly love my wife. Like I add these things to it to explain the difference. But we don't need to do that with God, because there is no difference. Like his love is always great. His love is always abundant. His love is all this. And here's where I'm getting with this. I don't want to go too far down the trail, and my brain is trying to process all of these thoughts this morning. But here's the thing that I do want to challenge you with. And I'm going to make this really simple. So I'm sorry if I've confused you or lost you or anything else. We need to understand the aspects of God are perfect, and there is no need for us to add anything to them. So when we look at his mercy, when we look at his love, when we look at his holiness, when we look at his justice, when we look at his anger, when we look at all of these aspects of him, we don't need to say God has righteous anger, because all of his anger is righteous. We don't need to say that he has holy justice. All of his justice is holy. I'm asked the word holy, that's another study. I'm not going to get there. But there's all of these things that we add things, and we want to talk about a specific aspect, and we want to try to hone it in, or we want to try to embellish something. And we want to say God's great love. Yes. But we don't need to say God's great love. We can say God's love because it's already great. And the reason I think this is so important, the reason that I feel like this is a challenge, and it might sound like something that's nuanced, But the worldly things that we have, they need adjectives because we need to try to explain them. I really like this drink. I like other drinks, but I really like this drink, and we need to promote it. We need to try to say this is elevated above it. We don't need to do that with God. He should not need to be separated from anything else. When we say God's love, our brain should automatically go to a love that is not here on earth, that is not explainable by words, that is not processed by our brains. We can't add anything to it because it's already above everything that we know. So we can just say God's love. We can just say God's mercy. We can just say God's justice because that justice, that mercy goes way beyond anything that we can explain. The justice that we have here on earth doesn't pale. I mean, it's so small and minute compared to God's justice. The mercies that we see here on earth, the stories even that we see, the parables that we would see in Scripture, that to describe the mercy of God, it's not comparable. Like His mercy is so far higher than that. We don't need to add adjectives to it. The aspect of this, the reason that these are important, the reason some of these thoughts are good to have, is that we need to elevate God so much. We need to push our thoughts of Him so high up that when we think of God, we're not comparing Him to earthly things. We're not trying to understand these things. So the questions that get asked, if God is so loving, why would He do this? No, that's not a question to ask. God is loving. And He loves us more than we could ever understand. His love goes beyond anything we can comprehend. His knowledge of what goes on, His mercy, His grace, all of that comes in. And He's so far up that we shouldn't question anything of God's. We shouldn't question His love. We shouldn't question His mercy. We shouldn't question His plans because we already know that they are so far above us. And sometimes I think either that scares us because we don't get it, we don't understand, and we try to like humanize God and we try to explain these things and bring Him in, put Him in a box, but He doesn't fit in a box because He just doesn't. There's nothing here. The other aspect I think is that we really have to humble ourselves and say that we can't get there. There's no aspect, there is no way in my life, this human body, period, I will never become like God. My love will never be like His. My mercy will never be like His. I am human. I am constrained by this. He is not. And so when we add all these superlatives and we add all these adjectives and we try to create all of these crazy things for God, I think we diminish God's actual characteristics. If we say, here's the aspect, if everyone is super special, if everyone is super, right? To steal from the Incredibles. We've been watching Incredibles because my son is Jack Jack. He just is. I don't know of any other way to explain my son right now. So we watch the Incredibles so he can see Jack Jack and maybe hopefully become nicer or better. I don't know. But it's probably just a really bad idea because he just sees him and he thinks it's awesome, so he just becomes him more. But to steal the line from them, if everybody is super, if everyone's a super person, then nobody's super. I think sometimes we use all these adjectives to God and we diminish what God really is. Because we've added all of these things to Him and we've added all of these things. We use all of these words and these phrases, and so we try to separate God by saying, oh, well, He's super this, or He's greatly this, or He's amazingly this. And I get that we do that in our language, but the mindset behind it is we have to be careful that we don't diminish His qualities by trying to add these adjectives and trying to constrain them by these adjectives that we can come up with. So I understand this is a little deeper, but my thought process is this. Have a bigger picture of God. Set Him apart from everything else. Yes, we need to use all of these special words to describe everything here on earth. Sure. But we should be able to get to a point, and we should strive to get to a point that we could just say God's love. We could just say God's mercy. We already all know how elevated that is, how high that is, how amazing that is. And it starts with having a mindset change. That God is not like us. We are not like God. So we don't need to try to describe him with all of these extra adjectives. We can just say, God is love, and it's the best love. Again, I just threw an adjective out, but that's because our brains need it. We need to get to a point where we just understand. There's nothing to add to it. There's no lower loves or lesser adjectives. No, it's just his love, and he doesn't have it at different points. It doesn't become greater at this point than it became at this point. It's just love, and he is that. And I know that at least it challenges me because it makes me think of God differently. That's the point. That's what I want to challenge you with today is allow God to be something special. Allow God to be something completely different than most every other thing that we have. So I love you guys. I'm hopeful I didn't confuse you or just make this, totally crazy. But the idea is to put God above everything else that we have and not try to use and debase him by trying to put all these human terms to him. I love you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I will see you tomorrow at around 10, right? Because we're going to change this to the 110 around 10. So love you guys. Bye.